10 Best Fantasy Anime That Aren't Isekai. Fantasy is inherently one of the most imaginative genres, so there are still plenty of ways to tell enjoyable non-isekai stories. Not every fantasy world needs to be introduced with a character from the real world being reincarnated. From high fantasy epics to hilarious satires of the genre, there are many worthwhile fantasy anime that aren't isekai stories. Number 10. The Tower of Druaga. Based on an infamously difficult 1980s Japanese arcade game and inspired by ancient Mesopotamian mythology like the Epic of Gilgamesh, but the Tower of Druaga isn't a direct adaptation. Instead, it borrows a lot of the names and concepts, applying these concepts to a fantasy world with a Middle Eastern aesthetic. For the most part, the Tower of Druaga is an oddball comedy. The first episode, consisting of protagonist Jill's dream after being hit in the head, is one of the funniest, most brilliantly self-aware satires of fantasy anime ever. From there, the series retains its comedic tone, though there are moments of genuine dramatic tension and emotional weight throughout. Number 9. Record of Lodoss War. Originally written as a recap of author Ryo Mizuno's tabletop RPG sessions, Record of Lodoss War naturally feels like an anime version of Dungeons & Dragons. Record of Lodoss War and its sequel series Chronicles of the Heroic Knight plays its high fantasy stories of destined heroes, evil kings, magic, monsters and legendary dragons completely straight. While this can make the series feel generic and dated, it's important to put Record of Lodoss War in its context as almost 30 years old and one of the first fantasy anime to get popular in North America. Record of Lodoss War isn't close to being generic because it's unoriginal, in fact, it helped to establish the genre. Number 8. Fairy Tail. Adapted from the popular manga series, Fairy Tail puts a novel spin on a typical fantasy world by making the entire cast wizards. Although every major character uses magic, the series' greatest strength in terms of world building is the novel, unique ways each of the characters uses their magic. Centered around the activities of the eponymous Wizards Guild, Fairy Tail is a fantasy comedy adventure that is nevertheless capable of balancing the comedic tone with serious action and emotionally powerful scenes. Number 7. Claymore. Feeling like a mashup of Berserk and The Witcher, Claymore is a grim and gritty dark fantasy anime following the swordswoman Claire, one of the eponymous Claymores, an all-female order of monster hunters, named for the massive swords their superhuman strength allows them to wield. The monster designs are suitably nightmarish, and the fight scenes are brutal and intense, helped by the slate of superhuman powers the Claymores have. Number 6. The Heroic Legend of Arslan. Inspired by the medieval Persian epic poem titled the Shahnameh with some influence from the Crusades, the Heroic Legend of Arslan is a sprawling tale of war and political intrigue like Game of Thrones. The story is driven by the exiled Prince Arslan's fight to reclaim his rightful throne, and his personal journey to grow into a capable leader and ruler. The non-European-inspired setting helps the Heroic Legend of Arslan to stand out both from other fantasy series aesthetically and in terms of its world building. The series can also stand on the strength of its narrative and action sequences. Number 5. Demon Slayer. Set in a stylized version of Taisho-era Japan haunted by monsters and demons and the superpowered sword fighters who battle them, Demon Slayer makes the most of its historical setting by drawing heavily by traditional Japanese visual arts and music for its soundtrack and art direction. These unique stylistic choices complement the intense action of fight scenes to create some truly unforgettable visuals and action sequences. Supported by these fantastic aesthetic choices, the compelling narrative has allowed Demon Slayer to become one of the most popular shonen series in recent years. Number 4. Spice and Wolf. The story of Lawrence, a traveling merchant in Hollow, an ancient wolf goddess forgotten by the community that once worshipped her. Spice and Wolf doesn't have much action but makes up for it with plenty of drama. While Lawrence attempts to navigate business deals while dealing with corrupt authority figures, Hollow attempts to navigate a world that has abandoned the ancient god she represents in favor of a new faith that demonizes the old ways. The series has some pretty deep insights into human nature and religious institutions and beliefs, and is a surprisingly informative introduction to the finer points of medieval economics. While this is all present in the original light novel series, the anime has the added benefit of a beautiful Celtic-inspired soundtrack. Number 3. Granblue Fantasy. Based on a popular web-based game, Granblue Fantasy is set in a world of islands in the sky. Gran's peaceful village life is interrupted by the mysterious girl Lyria falls out of the sky while attempting to escape the Ersta Empire. From there, Gran, Lyria, Gran's dragon companion Vyrn, and Lyria's bodyguard Catalina set out to avoid capture by the Empire and reach the legendary island of the Astrals. Granblue Fantasy's greatest strength is its unique world building, combining fairly typical fantasy elements, cues taken from real-world mythology, certain science fantasy aspects against the backdrop of an island of worlds floating in the sky to create a unique and memorable setting. Number 2. Slayers. Originally a light novel series, Slayers was adapted into a 3-season anime in the 1990s and had a 2-season revival in 2008, as well as several movies and specials. Taking place in a fairly typical Dungeons & Dragons-inspired fantasy world, Slayers sets itself apart with its unrelentingly comedic tone. Starring the self-centered but ultimately heroic sorceress Lena in verse, Slayers demonstrates what happens when a cast full of eccentrics is called upon to save the world. The series combines genuine action and tension with a bombastic cast who all play off each other perfectly, satirizing the tropes of the fantasy genre. Number 1. Is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? Based on a series of light novels, Is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? Draws on real-world mythology for its central premise. In the ancient past of the setting, the gods descended to the mortal world to live among the mortals. For the most part, this takes the form of the gods becoming the patrons of mortal adventuring guilds known as familia. The series focuses on the novice adventurer Belle, the first mortal to join the familia of the goddess Hestia. Much the series' humor comes from the fact that while Belle only has as romantic interest in the swordswoman Ace, Belle is such a relentlessly kind and caring individual that he inadvertently captures the hearts of just about every female character he encounters. Although it feels like recent fantasy anime has been dominated by Isekai, there's plenty of traditional fantasy anime for fans to try. Ranging from 90s classics to newer series, there are still a good deal of enjoyable anime out there that don't require the protagonist to be reincarnated into a new world. Thanks for watching this video. Hope you like it, and if you like it please subscribe to this channel for more such contents.